Death does not scare me. Now reaching my fullest potential does. Hey, it's me, your success coach Vera V, and if you're a Gen Z looking to reach your fullest potential, keep listening. I'm a full-time creator, entrepreneur, a lover of self-growth and wellness, and I absolutely love going on dates, which is what this podcast episode is about. In this episode, I'll share my dating stories, 5 reasons why you should start going on dates in your 20s. We'll talk about first dates, we'll talk about dating apps, but most importantly, we'll talk about how dating helps you grow, how dating helps you reach your fullest potential. And of course, in this episode, like any other, there'll be Vera's values, which are practical tools that you can apply into your life right away as you're listening to this. 3, 2, 1. Launch to success with Vera V. We're sitting on the floor. I got my matcha. Let's get into it. It's tea time. Let's start off with my dating overview because I feel like it's going to really help provide context. But before we get into it, remember to follow my podcast and leave it a review. 5 stars. New episodes come out every Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, regarding my dating upbringing and my outlook on it as I was growing up. First of all, I am Russian originally. This is culturally significant because I feel like Russian culture is different from American one. And I live in Southern California, close to Los Angeles, so it's like, it's different, you know what I mean? So I feel like it's important to preface. Now, also something interesting is that I never grew up being like, oh my gosh, this is going to be my dream wedding, or like, oh, this is going to be my future husband. I never really also grew up playing, what are they called? Like house, like, oh, I'm a wife and this is my husband. Because it was not really instilled into me by our family. My dad, in fact, my parents are married, but my dad is super against marriage, like the whole concept of it. Because no shade, no beef, but in the way that I was brought up, it was like a woman was being given away from one family to the other, or the person, because, you know, marriage can come in all different types of shapes, sizes, people, whatever. You get the point. And so because my dad has this outlook on marriage, I also grew up with that similar sort of outlook. And I was like, I don't ever want to get married because what's the point? It's just a legal commitment. Like you're just signing your name on paper to commit to this person legally. And that's not what's important. Now, obviously, this has changed and I've progressed and I think a little bit differently now, which we'll get to. But that was my original upbringing. But I mean, when I was in elementary school or like kindergarten, I never really had boyfriends because once again, that was not like instilled into me. But I had people that I liked. But the funniest thing is, and let me know if you also had this at some point, but I would like a guy, for example, there's one specific one I'm thinking of, but basically, whatever. I liked a guy in my 3rd grade class, and as soon as I knew that he liked me back, I would get the ick. I would be like, no, thank you, next. I gotta find another crush now. And crushes overall, for me at least, they just made life more fun. Like, it was just a cute experience, you know, having a crush in elementary school. I don't know, I feel like it's just very childcore, you know? A funny story I want to share is when I think it was in 3rd grade. So I left Russia. We moved with my whole family to California, United States of America, which is where I'm at right now. Working, living, thriving, thriving and slaying and living. Oh my gosh, I just combined 3 words. But you get what I'm trying to say. We moved when I was in 4th grade. But I think in 2nd or 3rd grade, I really liked this guy. His name is Vanya. I also remember his last name, but I'm not going to tell you. I don't know how I still remember. But he was actually, or maybe it was 1st grade, but he was one of the first people that I liked in elementary school. Like I had a ginormous crush on him. And I had a diary at the time, which something's never changed because I still have 4 journals that I write in every single day. I'm a big journaling girly, wellness, self-growth. You get the point. But with that guy, I really liked him. And so something very interesting, just to explain my child logic, is my best friend also liked him, right? We had big crushes on this guy. And for some reason, it did not feel competitive, at least not from what I remember. It was just like, oh yeah, she likes him too. Like, cool. And then she told him, like, oh, Vanya, I like you. I think you're cute, or whatever she said in 1st grade. And he was like, oh my gosh, Ksyusha, I like you too. These are such Russian names, by the way. And you know what my little 1st grade brain thought? Instead of being like, oh, they're together now, I was like, oh my gosh, she told him that she likes him and it worked for her because he likes her back, obviously. Why don't I do the same? And I was shy, I think a little bit. I was way more shy after we moved to United States of America because English, language barrier, not my first language. But in Russia, I was still a little bit shy, just a tad bit. So I was like, oh, Ksyusha, my best friend, can you tell Vanya that I like him? And she did. And guess what happened? She thought I was crazy. I don't know why in my mind, I was like, oh, it's going to be a good idea because it worked for her. But no, it did not work. And well, nothing ever happened there. It was 1st grade. But that's just a silly little story to give you an idea of me. But also I had like fantasies of having a boyfriend because I grew up in Russia. It was outside of St. Petersburg. It was kind of like, In Russian, it would be called a village, but it wasn't really a village. We just lived near a forest, which I love so much. Growing up near a forest was such a beautiful experience. We would play all the time outside, which I feel like kids nowadays growing up in the city, like you don't really get that, you know? And I feel like that was such a valuable experience. But I don't know, if I saw a cute guy when I was like 7 too, walking around in our little village, I'd be like, oof, oof, maybe we can date. But I would never talk to them, obviously, because I wanted them to pursue me. Silly. And then elementary school here in America after we moved, I honestly had like maybe 2 big crushes. I had some people like me, but I just curved and rejected them. I was like, no, sorry, I will not go on a date with you with my little Russian accent. But I had the biggest crush on this one guy. And this is funny. And let me know if this ever happened to you or if I was just weird. But in my mind, I really liked him. I liked him so much. And I think he liked me back. But the way that I expressed that I liked him is I would not look at him. And I mean, I would not look at him at all in the slightest. I don't know what this says about me or my personality. But for example, if you're watching this on YouTube or if you're watching this on Spotify video, you can see me looking at you, right? So imagine you're him. I would just literally be like, just pretend that he does not exist. I would not talk to him, nothing. If he said something to me, obviously I wouldn't ignore him. I'd be like, oh, thank you. Because we had academic competition together. Also, another thing about me, I love learning so much. Like growing up, I was kind of a big nerd. I think I still am. But especially growing up, I did a pentathlon, which is an academic competition. And we were in it together. And he was like, before we had the actual competition, the guy had the biggest crush on ever. That was, I think, 6th grade. He was like, oh, best of luck. And I was like, thank you. And I didn't say anything else. I don't know why. Did I want to seem mysterious or what was up with that? But basically, no eye contact, nothing. Just did not look at the guy ever. So yeah, nothing else ever happened there because obviously I would not look at him. Then middle school came around and high school as well. And I feel like middle school is really when kids start dating, like your age, and you're like, ooh, people are, in couples and they have a boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. But for me, for some reason, I just decided I was like, nah, this isn't for me. Middle school relationships are dumb. High school relationships are even worse. I don't really like anybody around me. No, I had maybe 7 years. I had maybe 2 people that I liked. And honestly, I don't know. I just didn't want to pursue anything with them. I just liked them from a distance. I was like, you seem cool, but I don't want to get to know you, which is interesting. I don't know how my mind worked. If you relate to this, please let me know so that I know I'm not the only one. But yeah, it's interesting. Now, we're about to get into tea. So sip some matcha or coffee or whatever it is that you're drinking. I'm sipping matcha because I love it so matcha. I love matcha so matcha. And then in high school, I really got into self-improvement. And that's when I started my business because I became a content creator. And so for me, the mindset that I had on dating, and it was very clear and very prominent. And I was very much like with it. I was like, dating is just a waste of time. When you date people, you just waste your own time. Nothing's ever going to come of it. Just a very pessimistic outlook, which right now I think quite the opposite. I mean, there's still some of that left over because I am very, very, very selective and I'm very selective with my time because time is honestly the most prominent resource we have in our lives. You know what I mean? But that mindset has definitely changed. And right now I view dating as fuel, which may sound really weird and we'll get into it, but dating is fuel. We'll talk about it. Now, when I really started dating, that was after I graduated high school early. I graduated early by semester. I feel like when I say that, people are like, oh, did you leave high school at 14? No, I left it just 1 semester early. But it was still a very interesting experience because, I mean, all my friends, all the people I knew were still in high school. They were going to prom, graduation. I did not attend either of those at all. The closest I got to prom is I did a prom campaign for JCPenney as a content creator. That was a really cool partnership, but that's it. Like I never went to prom. I just felt like I got ahead of my life and I didn't want to really go back. And I left high school for a reason, you know what I mean? Because I wanted to pursue what I wanted to pursue. And so I started dating and meeting new people after I graduated high school. And I also went through a breakup, which I shared on my social media, on Instagram specifically, breakup diaries. A lot of you guys, Gen V, found me through that, which is really interesting. But I feel like maybe it's not a very common way to look at relationships that way, but I think relationships are essential to self-growth. I feel like in the self-improvement community, you always hear like, oh, focus on yourself, grind. And yeah, 100%. I don't think you should go into relationships or get into relationships to seek validation or anything like that. That's not what this is about at all. But I think relationships are really key to growth because that's when you discover the absolute most about yourself. So this is what this podcast episode is about. And that breakup and going through that relationship helped me grow a lot, which once again, we'll get to. Now, moving on. That was just a little overview. Let's talk about my dating mindset and what dating means to me. Honestly, I'm so excited for this podcast episode because I feel like dating is such a personal topic that oftentimes does not get brought up, especially in the self-improvement space. But I feel like truly that it is absolute key. And especially as Gen Z, we're young, we're wild, we're fun, hopefully. Maybe not, that's okay too. I'm not that wild, but I am fun, I like to think. And so dating, it's something that personally I think about almost every day. It's something that's in our social media, pop culture, you see it all the time, but nobody really talks about it. So let's get into it. Now, what is my mindset of dating? Personally, I think dating equals personal growth. I do not date to get validation or to get told that I'm beautiful, attractive, whatever. I date to grow as a person, which is honestly, that personal growth is my motivation in life for absolutely everything. Some people, when I tell them that, it comes off across as like, oh, you're just using people to... No, that's not how it is. It's just a mindset I have. Obviously, with dating and with meeting new people, even if it's friends or networking at events, I'm not like, what can I get out of this? I'm like, oh, this is a cool person. Like, I want to connect and get to know them. But secondary, it's always like, how can I learn from this person? How can I get inspired by this person? How can I get motivated by this person? You know, that's my mindset personally. And then something else that's very important to know is that when I go on a first date, especially, for me, it does not have a romantic subtext. Like for me, I'm not going on a date to be like, oh, are we gonna kiss at the end of this? No, I go into a first date just to literally meet the person, get the first impression, obviously learn as much as I can about them, learn as much as I can about myself, just have a good time and just see who they are. So it does not have that sort of romantic subtext. That's why I do not like dinner date at all, because I feel like it's always like, ooh, like dinner date. But for me, I don't like that. I like let's go to the park and play chess. Let's go to the beach and take a walk at the beach in the morning. Do you know what I mean? I like that sort of vibe. Or get matcha. Anytime matcha, you had me at matcha. As soon as you said matcha, I was in. And then another thing, obviously with dating, you can never know how a date is gonna go. But a rule I have for myself is I only go out with people I find interesting. Okay, attractive, obviously, like that's a plus. How I get attracted to a person, what makes a person attractive to me is if they are interesting. I really seek out intelligence, ambition, a good sense of humor, and also just, I would say those are the biggest things. Being driven, because I feel like I'm all those things, so it's nice to see that in somebody else as well. I feel like that sounded very like, like I'm cool, I'm humble, I'm hot, I'm amazing. And it's nice to know that there are people like that as well. That's not how I meant it, but you get what I mean. I like drive, I like ambition, because that really inspires me and motivates me. And I like being around those kinds of people. And then obviously I have no expectations going into dates at all. The only expectation is just to learn about the person, connect, have a good time, and learn more about myself. There's like nothing about how it's going to go, how it's not going to go. I'm just going into it with a very clear and open mind. And then another thing is that I'm very selective. I'm very selective with people who I choose to pursue a relationship with, and I'm pretty selective with who I go out with. Like that person, once again, they have to be interesting to me. Otherwise, what's the point, you know? I don't really like to pursue anything in life where I'm like it's all right. There's this quote. If it's not a F yes, it is an F no. And I kind of live by that in a lot of aspects. Now, we got to Vera's value number 1 part, which I'm excited for. 3 questions I want you to ask yourself. First of all is, how satisfied are you with your dating life at the moment? And dating, it means different things to different people, completely fine. But keeping in mind what dating means to you, how satisfied are you with it? 1 to 10. Are you just elated with where you're at? And once again, your dating life, it does not, for you to be fully satisfied with it, you do not have to be going on dates 24/7. If for you, your dating life is just going on a date or meeting a new person once in a while, or maybe you're just really not focusing on that at all, whatever it is, just see how satisfied you are about it. 1 to 10, okay? Secondly, what is your current mindset on dating? I shared about mine. Share about yours. Feel free to do so in the comments, especially if you're watching this on YouTube, and let's have a discussion. But what is your current mindset on dating? And then thirdly, how has your mindset on dating served you so far? Because for me, for example, when I was like, oh, dating is a waste of time, I feel like I missed out on some aspects of life that are very important. And now I'm getting that sort of experience, like I've gotten that in the past years. But I feel like that mindset has not really served me versus right now, like every person's interesting, just a matter of getting to know them, and you can learn so much from every person. That mindset is serving me at the moment. Do you see what I'm asking? That's Vera's value number 1. Now, moving on to the next section of this podcast, which I'm really excited for, is 5 reasons that you should start dating. And also I'll be sharing my dating stories as well, which is where it gets juicy. So make sure that your cup of matcha or a cup of coffee or tea, whatever it is that you're drinking, is full. Or even if it's water. I really respect the water grind, because right now I'm hitting my hydration goals. I have a custom water bottle that actually tracks everything. I did a partnership with the brand Hydrate Spark. They're amazing. And I'm just on top of it. I'm so hydrated. Kind of proud of it, so I wanted to share. So, 5 reasons to start dating. And remember, dating is self-growth. First is that when you date, you expand your horizons 1 date at a time. Because truth is, we learn the absolute most about ourselves through interacting with other people. Have you ever had an experience where, for example, somebody told you something, and then you reacted in a way that you didn't know you were going to react, and then later on you were like, oh, like really? I reacted this way. Or somebody did something, and then later on you're like, wow, I had no idea that I would feel this way about that. You see, you learn something about yourself in those two experiences, example experience that I provided. And it's the same thing here in dating, in friendships, in relationships with your coworkers, in networking. You learn so much about yourself, and there's no way for you to learn that much if you're just sitting at home alone in your room, just being all cuddled up in your blanket. That is a pretty direct truth, and it is a truth nonetheless. Because for me, for example, I'm a very theoretical person. I love coming up with theories. And before I started dating, I would have all these theories about what relationships should be and what they shouldn't be. Even now, I still have them. You know what I mean? But there's no way to put those theories to the test, or there's no way to learn about a relationship unless you are in one, unless you start to build one. And then it's a whole different playing field. Does that make sense? So one way I expanded my horizon in dating is I was seeing this guy once. We saw each other for maybe like a month or so. He is an aerospace engineer, which regarding my specific type, I love aerospace engineers for some reason. I don't know why. Most of the time, it is completely accidental. I'm like, what do you do for work? And they're like, oh, I'm an aerospace engineer. I'm like, cool. But you're not the only one. I don't know what it is, but super cool. I know a lot about aerospace engineering and physics now, and mechanics and quantum computing and everything, which I love intelligence. That's something that's very important to me. But this guy, he was we don't talk now, so I mean, I have no way of knowing what's going on in his life. But he was getting a master's at USC for aerospace engineering. And by the way, he was number one at USC. So literally one of the smartest people I've ever met, which is what I love about dating, because I feel like you get to meet such interesting people. And once again, if you go into it with no romantic subtext, like at first, right? You're just meeting the person, literally first impression, no pressure whatsoever. You just get to take away so much for it. But basically what really inspired me about him is the fact that he's a very long-term sort of person. And I mean in the way that he thinks. Because for me, for example, when I think about my life or my future, I honestly cannot see past like a 3-month mark at most. Maybe 1 month, maybe 1 year, but no longer than 1 year. So that's why when anyone's like, where do you see yourself in 10 years? I'm like, I don't know. Because I feel like, I don't know. I am disciplined, obviously, and I try to be as consistent as I am. But I think the way that I'm built, I have pretty inconsistent energy in a way that I get inspired and I pursue that. And I get inspired by another thing and I pursue that. And it's all in the same direction. But you know, I still have my bouts of inspiration nonetheless. Does that make sense? And with this guy, he really saw himself 30 years from now, 15 years from now. And I thought that was very inspiring. So I think after our third date, we had such a good conversation. I mean, on all the dates, really. Like, it was really nice getting to know him. But what I did afterwards is I went home, I sat down, I opened my Notion, which I'm a big Notion girly. I love Notion so much. Or should I say so much? Open up my Notion. And I was like, wow, this guy has a long-term goal for himself, right? In his business, in his life, whatever. And I have goals. I'm a very goal-oriented person, but those goals do not typically go above the 1 year mark. Like, I just know I have things I want to do, but I never really set them as concrete goals until then. So I was like, okay, I need to come up with a 5-year goal for myself regarding my business, because business is something that's prevalent in my life right now. Like, I'm really focusing on that. And being young and being an entrepreneur and running my own business, it's a very interesting experience, which I can talk about in later episodes, but I feel like it comes across. Well, anyway, sat down, I wrote my 5-year goal, and that's the goal that I still have. Do you know what I mean? So meeting that one person has impacted me in such a powerful way. And it happened not because I met him, but because I came in with that mindset of willing to learn from anyone and everyone I meet. Thanks to him, I completely expanded my horizon. And if we did not meet, would I still have the 5-year goal? Honestly, probably. I think I would still come to it, but he just sped up the process, if that makes sense. Secondly, when you date, you learn a lot about yourself. Once again, you learn the most about yourself when you're interacting with other people. Because if you're just here by yourself on your bed or on your couch making up theories about relationships, whatever, and I'm totally calling myself out right now, my past self, then it's just theoretical knowledge. But when you actually go out and you meet people and you figure out what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what you like, what you don't like, that's all practical knowledge that you can apply. For example, it is through dating that I learned the most important qualities to me in a person, which are, first of all, intelligence. I love talking. As you can tell, I have a podcast. Conversation is very important to me. And it is very important to me that a person can keep up with my mental energy, because I tend to jump around a lot. I know a lot about different topics and like I want to talk about them. You know, talking is important to me. So first is intelligence. Secondly, I would say ambition, because I'm a very ambitious person. So it just makes sense that I'm with a person who's kind of a similar build. And then thirdly, what's also very important to me is chivalry, or like gentlemanness, whatever that term is. And I did not know that would be as important as it is, but I grew up Russian. Like, my family is completely Russian. I'm literally an immigrant. And I feel like dating culture in Russian is very different. It is very common in Russia for the guy you're seeing to get your flowers regularly, pay for all your dinners that you guys go on, ask you out, and just show you those kinds of attention. And I feel like in America, it's slightly different. It's still the same vibe, typically, but it's slightly different, which is why regarding my personal type, I've discovered the people I'm attracted to Typically, it is immigrants, especially from Europe, because I feel like we have a very similar mindset. That guy, Rocket Man, that's his nickname, Rocket Man, the one at USC, he is German. He's originally from Germany, which is why I feel like we clicked on a lot of those values. Cultural values. And also when you date, you really start to figure out what kind of people are compatible with you and what kind of people aren't. For example, I'll be very open with this, and I have not shared this, I don't think, except maybe in a YouTube vlog I have. But my last relationship ended because we just weren't compatible. Like we just weren't, you know, and that's fine. That's completely okay. I think it's all a process of dating, which is one of the reasons we'll get to it. But after that relationship experience, I now know what kind of people I see myself with, what kind of people I will be compatible with, keeping my future goals and direction in life, and what kind of people just aren't for me, and that's okay. And then obviously one of the biggest things you learn about yourself is just your type, which I used to be in the past, like, I don't have a type. And I do not like to think I have a type, but my sisters, my absolute best friends, they're like, Vera, you definitely have a type. A very specific one that I had, which is so funny. I told you, aerospace engineers, people who are typically in STEM, men in STEM, I don't know what it is, but I don't know. But I feel like the discussions we have, like we talk about AI and mechanics and physics and aerospace engineering and SpaceX and whatever. It's just really fun to me. So AI, typically European immigrants. I don't know why, it just happens to be that way. And then also a really specific one. Like I had a phase where I went on some dates and it was literally all guys from Germany who played volleyball above 6'3" who are aerospace engineers. At this point, I think genuinely, if anyone's going to aerospace engineering at any of the California schools, just like hit me up. I'll connect you. I have connections now. Just so funny because I am not into aerospace engineering at all. It's something that interests me, but like obviously I'm not taking any classes or anything regarding to that, but I know so many aerospace engineers now, which is very interesting. So I now know my type. Thirdly, when you date, you really start to master the art of relationships, and relationships are an art. And once again, in the past, I used to be like, oh, relationships are a waste of time. Like, what's the point if you're not going to marry the person? And once again, marriage, to me, it's like, now I feel like my mindset has changed from marriage as being a completely off-limits thing that is not important. I think marriage is cool, genuinely. Obviously, I do not want to think of it as like a woman being given away or the person being given away to another family, because I do not support that. For example, I saw a reel, Instagram reel, my dad sent it to me. It was somebody's wedding, and then I think the dad of the bride, he was speaking to the groom and he was like, you know, please do not hurt our daughter. If you want to hurt her, just give her back to us. And I don't know, that didn't sit right with me. And he was like, yeah, of course. And everyone in the comments was like, oh, that's so cute. Like the dad's so protective. But personally, I don't know. It's the same thing as if you're wanting to marry me, do not ask permission from my dad. Because what the heck? Ask my permission. That's the only permission you need, because I'm my own person. Do you know what I mean? So with marriage, personally, I do not like the concept of being given away from one family to the other. I do not find that romantic. I find it weird. Me personally, like I just do not align with that. Marriage, I think you just take your relationship to the next level. Like you really start to build a life together. That's how I see it, at least. So I'm not against it at all. I think probably in the future I'm going to get married. Also, you get tax benefits, which is great. Very practical. But yeah, I mean, I haven't thought about it too much, but it's not something I'm completely closed off to. But also by dating, by mastering the art of relationships, not only do you master romantic relationships, but also your friendships improve, because you improve key skills in relationships, such as communication, empathy, resilience. It all works together, because essentially, no matter what anybody says, as people, we are human. Well, duh. But as people, we're social animals. We live in a society, right? We need to know how to interact with each other effectively. Now, fourth reason to start dating in your 20s is that you grow your emotional intelligence. And this happens especially when you're in a relationship. Because, for example, if you have like a little story that goes on, well, I call it like a story, but situationship, whatever. I do not really believe in the situationship thing, because I was honestly raised different. Until there's a commitment, there's no commitment. If you go on 1 to 2 dates, you can only get so deep. When you're building a relationship with a person, that's when your emotional intelligence really comes into play. Because I feel like relationships are a lot more volatile than friendships. And I'm saying this in quotation marks because volatile, not in a bad way, but it's more sensitive, right? If your friend tells you something versus your significant other tells you something, like with significant other, at least in my experience, you'll just be impacted that by a lot more, because the person's closest to you, right? It's your friend with a romantic subtext. So it's like a double trouble, basically, if that makes sense. Being in a relationship, it really helped me grow emotionally, because I remember at the beginning of it, also I think incompatibility was a big factor that I just did not realize as soon as I wish I would have. But, you know, it happened. I've let go of the experience. I've really learned a lot from it. But I would spin out a lot, like mentally, and I would overthink certain things. And I don't know, he would tell me something and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I'd go home thinking about it for hours and for days and wasting so much mental energy. And being in a relationship, it really helped me improve, because then I started asking myself, like, is this really serving me or serving my relationship? No, I'm just wasting mental energy. Overthinking does not really do well if you're in a relationship with somebody. So I really learned, I guess you would call it emotional resilience, but also if a spin out was about to come on and I started getting those thoughts of like, oh, what if this? What if that? I would just stop myself. I would be like, is this thought serving me? No? Okay, let go, move on. And I think also a big part of relationships, especially for us overthinkers, is assuming things. Maybe your partner acted in a slightly different way, or maybe they said something that was a little bit off, and then you just start assuming like, oh, maybe they don't love me. Maybe they this, maybe they that. So that's also an important point to stop yourself and be like, is this thought process serving me? If not, no thank you. Thank you. Next, move on. So honestly, being in a relationship, I started understanding myself a lot more, which has helped me in all areas of life, genuinely. With work, for example, I'm a very emotional person, okay? That's just the way it is. And being a content creator, you have a lot of input about anything and everything that you do in life, which is a very interesting concept. But I could post literally me drinking matcha, and there's somebody that's out there that's going to be, oh, matcha, why are you drinking matcha? Matcha is so bad for you, whatever. They'll find a reason. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of input in your life. In the past, before being in a relationship or before really developing in that dating area of life, I would really get caught up in these comments and be like, oh my gosh, this person thinks this of me and why do they think that? That's not what I was trying to say. But from being in a relationship, I've learned to understand myself more emotionally. So if I see a comment that's like that, I stop myself, stop, drop, roll. I'm like, is this comment going to add anything into my life, or is it going to subtract my mental energy or whatever? And if it's subtract, I just let it go and I just move on. I understand myself a lot more emotionally is what I'm trying to say. And the fifth reason to start going on dates more is, especially if you look at your life more long term, you really start to understand what you seek out in a long-term partner. And this reason specifically is a little bit harder for me because, like I shared, I do not typically think long-term. The longest term I think of is 5 years. And I have no idea what's really going to happen in 5 years, but I know where I want to be, but no longer than 5 years. Everything else is kind of stressful to me. For example, if you're like, oh, Vera, let's start a business. I'm not going to be like, oh my gosh, where do we want this business to be in 10 years? I'm going to be like, okay, what do we need to do today? Does that make sense? So in life coaching, I'm a certified life coach. So in life coaching, there are typically two types of people, if you look at it in that way. There are people who think more longer term, and there are people who think shorter term. Shorter term is me. Let me know which one you are. But basically, when you start dating and meeting new people, and once again, you do not have to go into it with a romantic subtext. I feel like in dating, people always assume that it's like, ooh, like dating, you guys are gonna kiss and whatever. But it does not have to be that way. It's literally like meeting a friend for coffee, but just slightly different. It can evolve in a different way, but you know what I'm trying to say. You really start to understand what you want in a long-term partner. And for me, for example, I know that long term, I see myself with somebody who is intelligent, ambitious, driven, and obviously funny. Humor is very important. I like to think I'm funny, sometimes at least. And I like laughing. I like having a positive attitude in life. And that's something that's important to me. And I would not have figured that out unless I started meeting people and going on dates in my 20s. Now, Vera's value number 2 is to ask yourself, what are you looking for at the moment in the romantic relationships area of your life? What are you looking for in dating? Is it just to have a good time, meet new people? Or do you want a relationship? Do you want to find that partner for a relationship? For me right now, honestly, I think mentally I'm not in a space to be building like a lot relationship or to be getting myself into one at the moment. That can change literally tomorrow. But I think currently I'm at the point in my life where I'm just meeting new people, getting to know myself more, just exploring, seeing what's out there, and obviously meeting the amazing aerospace engineers. That's pretty much the only people I go out with. Soon they're going to start talking and be like, wait, who did you go on a date with last week? Was it Vera? And then the other guy, the aerospace engineer's friend, who's also an aerospace engineer, is going to be like, yeah, did you go out with her too? And then they'll all be like, yeah, Vera, why is she only going for aerospace engineers? Maybe I want to become an aerospace engineer on a subconscious level and go off to space. I don't know. That's what my friend told me. I was like, hey, Queen, I went out with another aerospace engineer. And she was like, Vera, we all know that you secretly want to go to space, which, yeah. Absolutely. Now, let's talk about first dates, which I feel like they have a reputation for being completely and utterly awkward, which, yeah, I 100% see that because you're meeting a person for the first time. But with first dates, a rule that I have for myself is, once again, go into it with absolutely no expectations. The only expectation is just to have a good time, or as good of a time as you can, because obviously we all get nervous, and just to learn as much about yourself and the person as you can. It does not have to have a romantic subtext, okay? Some of the best dates, actually the best date I've ever been on, was with an aerospace engineer. Another one. This guy he's going to start a master's program in Caltech. So super smart guy. But we had such a great conversation over coffee. I had matcha, of course. We were talking about AI. We were talking about quantum computing, which I learned a lot about that. The chauffeur's equation, which if you're into physics, you know about that. We're talking about a lot of stuff. And that conversation really enlightened me. I had such a good time because it's so nice to just connect with the person mentally and intellectually. And for me, it's all different for every person, right? But for me, that intellectual and mental connection is super important. If I do not have that, like I just cannot be close with that person. And now let's talk about online dating. So with online dating, I feel like as Gen Z, it is one of the top ways to date. And for me, something I want to share is that I thought online dating was like, sorry, but I thought it was for losers. I was so judgmental about it for no reason at all. But I was like, there's no way that I'm meeting my boyfriend on a dating site. Absolutely not. Like, online dating, ew, disgusting. Meet people in real life. Where's our society going? Until I actually started online dating. And the reason why I like it, and personally I prefer it to meeting in real life, is because, well, first of all, I'm self-employed. I work from home. I'm a content creator and an entrepreneur. I have a coaching business. Like, where am I going to be meeting people? You know what I mean? There's no really space for that unless I'm going to events, and which I do all the time. But I feel like if I'm at a work event, I have a very work mindset. I'm not going to be thinking about like, ooh, this guy's cute. Like, no, if I'm at a work event, I'm professional about it, obviously. So with online dating, it kind of gives you this space. But also what I like about it is I lead a very healthy lifestyle, okay? I do not drink. I do not smoke. No use of cannabis. No use of nothing. I'm very, very, very sober, high on life, and matcha. I think that's why I'm talking so fast right now, because I'm a little bit jittery. I'm kind of caffeine sensitive, just a tad, but we don't talk about that. We also don't talk that this is my second cup of matcha, in fact. But with online dating, you can really sort people out based on those factors. Like if somebody drinks regularly, that's their choice, but that's not something that's going to align with me. And if you meet a person at Trader Joe's, you're going to have to get into a conversation to be like, hey, so do you drink? Do you smoke? You can't ask that right off the bat. Do you know what I mean? But when you're online dating, you obviously can because it's right there. Now, regarding dating apps, let's talk about them if you're not familiar. First of all, there's Tinder. Very much known for hookups. Some people meet their husbands and wives on Tinder, which if you did that, or if that happened to you, that's great. I would love to hear your story. Personally, I don't really use Tinder. I don't know. I never really have. Second is Bumble. That's when women make the first move. Because in Tinder, sometimes, if you've ever been on it, from what I've heard, people can say, men, if you're especially, they can do some real weird stuff. And it's just like, very sexual, whatever. But on Bumble, women get to make the first move. So essentially you start off the conversation, which is cool. But I feel like after a while, that gets to be a little bit, like you just get tired. I don't know. I don't even know what to come up with anymore. I just type a person's name. I'm like, Jeff. That's it. I don't know what else to say. Thirdly, there's also Hinge. That's a popular one. Personally, I think that's my favorite dating app because it's more thoughtful than Bumble, I think, or Tinder, because on those you just swipe like left and right, left and right. But on Hinge, you actually like a person. Like you like their picture or you like their prompt. A lot of prompts. Personally, that's the thing that I like the most about Hinge because you can really show off your personality on that. And typically on Hinge, for me, for example, I do not like texting a lot before going out with somebody. Like I want to know that the person is interesting. And if we have some fun banter in between, that's great. But I just don't like texting. All I need to do in order for us to know if we're going to be compatible is just literally to look at the person, like eye contact. Just, I don't know how I can tell, but I just can't. And then smell them. And obviously have a conversation. But like with smelling, it may sound weird. But for me, I can tell a lot of things by smell. Especially if I'm attracted to the person or not, which I don't know. I feel like a dog. Dogs do that. I don't know why I'm like this. But smell, very important to me. So for me, real life experiences are super important. Typically, before going out with somebody, I do not text that much. Maybe for like a day or sometimes right away. The guy's like, oh, are you available next weekend? I'm like, yeah, let's calendar it. Because I'm also a big calendar girly. So yeah. So Hinge is personally my favorite app for dating. But then also there's this one, if you're an influencer, if you're a creator, if you're a celebrity, there's Raya. And this is the one that I want to get on just to see. I do not have a lot of interest in dating celebrities. You guys know my heart lies with aerospace engineers. But on Raya, there's a lot of interesting people from what I've heard. I applied recently, so we'll see how that goes. I'm on the wait list. You need referrals for that, and I do not know anybody who uses Raya, but that's like the app for celebrities. So if you want to meet Bad Bunny, go to Raya. From what I've heard, once again, I cannot confirm this, but I want to give you options. And then there's also Coffee Meets Bagel. I think I downloaded it for a second to see. Was not a fan. Match.com. I don't know if that's us. That's for us Gen Z. I think it's a very old But whatever works. But the most popular ones are definitely Tinder, Bumble, and Hinge. And Hinge top. Secondly is Bumble. Tinder not even on the list because I don't use it. Now, that brings us to the end of this podcast episode. I felt like it was so juicy and so fun and kind of a different format. Let me know what you thought about it. And also, especially if you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, there's a little question sticker if you scroll a little bit down while you're on the podcast episode. And on YouTube, obviously comment. But what are your thoughts about dating? What are your thoughts about dating as it relates to self-growth? Because I feel like, I don't know if what I have is an unpopular opinion or not, but I'm very curious to see what you think, Gen V. So let me know. Vera's generation, let's hear it. But essentially, conclusion, I think dating is very important to self-growth. And once again, dating does not have to come from a place of validation or like wanting to find the one. If you're literally dating just to date, I think that's completely fine. That's not the mindset that I used to have, but it is the mindset that I have now. And I feel like it serves me well because I've met so many cool people. I've had so many cool experiences. I literally went flying on a plane for my second date. The guy suggested it. He was like, "Oh, do you want to go like on a flight?" And I was like, "Sure." He took care of everything and I was on the plane. Next thing I knew, it was so much fun. And I actually made a post about it and I think a reel too. But yeah, so that was this podcast episode. Make sure that you follow this podcast, leave it a review, 5 stars. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to my YouTube channel, give it a thumbs up. If you're watching this on Apple Podcasts, I expect a paragraph as a review, okay? Just kidding. But let me know what you think about dating. And new episodes come out every Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. If there are any topics you'd like for me to discuss in my podcast, let me know. I'm very excited. I love my podcast and I love Logic to Success together. Remember, we're going together always. Bye. I'll see you next Monday at 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Launch to Success with Vera V.